From The National, this is Trending Middle East. I'm Yasmin Al-Taji. It's Thursday, March 6th. Here are today's headlines. Reactions to the Arab League's new plan on Gaza have been pouring in since it was announced late Tuesday. Among them, a U.S. rejection. Details came at the end of an emergency Arab summit in Cairo. It was set to counter the proposal pushed forward by U.S. President Donald Trump that would involve a U.S. takeover of the enclave.
So the U.S., as expected, it reacted and criticized the plan that was adopted by the Arab states yesterday in the Arab League summit. It said it fails to address the reality that Gaza has become uninhabitable and that residents cannot humanly live in a territory covered in debris and an exploded ordnance.
The National's assistant foreign editor Hadya Alawi tells us more.
The National Security Council spokesman Brian Hughes told The National that the U.S. President Donald Trump still stands by the plan that he previously floated, which basically aims to displace the Palestinians from Gaza, to make way for their reconstruction and settle them in Jordan and Egypt. He also said that Trump stands by building a Gaza free of Hamas, but also left the door open for further discussion with Arab states on the future of Gaza. We saw an extraordinary summit where all the Arab states came together and they agreed on this plan, which is very comprehensive and it addresses so many different aspects of reconstruction in Gaza, not just the actual rebuilding of it, but also politically, security-wise, and it addresses them on so many different levels.
Meanwhile, Palestinians worry the plan won't go into effect without American support.
Palestinians are actually worried about the feasibility of it being implemented without the U.S. support. So we saw the rejection of the plan by the U.S. Obviously, Israel also rejected it. So Palestinians are a little bit worried that it might not be implemented. They also bring the point that this plan needs to be implemented in the next 1 or 2 years. Obviously, it's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. But there is a sense of urgency amongst Palestinians that this needs to be implemented soon.
An emergency summit of the Organization for Islamic Cooperation is scheduled for tomorrow in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. It's a step geared toward broadening endorsement of the plan.
In the Middle East, we're bringing back our hostages from Gaza. In my first term, we achieved one of the most groundbreaking peace agreements in generations, the Abraham Accords.
U.S. President Donald Trump has promised a peaceful and prosperous future for the Middle East. He said this in an address to Congress on Tuesday night that was nearly 2 hours long. It was marked by silent Democratic protest, with politicians holding signs accusing the president of lying. One politician was escorted out after heckling the president.
We heard him pledge to work in the tradition of the Abraham Accords as his administration works on its vision for Gaza and the wider Middle East.
The National's U.S. correspondent Ellie Sennett reports from Washington.
It was a sweeping and partisan speech that lasted almost 2 hours. Opposition and minority Democrats in the chamber repeatedly held up signs condemning billionaire Elon Musk's unelected role in this administration, calling out the president on what they say were lies throughout the speech that often vilified immigrants.
Just over a month into his second term, Trump's foreign policy has broken away from that of his predecessor, Joe Biden. This address came amid a storm of unprecedented executive orders, crackdowns on the press, and a trade war with allies Canada and Mexico. Trump has also hired Elon Musk to cull the federal workforce and slash government expenditures.
Before the address, I spoke with Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, who, if you watched the speech, you'd see sitting behind the president on the right, who signaled to me that congressional Republicans would back up Donald Trump as the administration ramps up support for this far-right government in Israel, even in moments like this weekend where, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio circumvented politicians in the legislative branch and fast-tracked billions of more in arms sales to the U.S. ally. Something I think our listeners should keep in mind is, for those of us focused on foreign policy in the Middle East, I had to wait until the tail end of that 2 hours to get anything pertaining to the region out of the president. This was largely a display of the partisan posture of this new Trump administration, especially with respect to this, the historic drama we witnessed last week in the Oval Office, berating of the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, the trade war launched on Mexico and Canada this week. I would say that this administration is redrawing what kind of an actor the U.S. is on the world stage.
Syria and Lebanon are seeking to enhance their relations with Arab nations, particularly Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Syrian interim President Ahmed al-Shara and Lebanon's new President Joseph Aoun are both new faces in the Arab League, with some parallels in their first moves in office. Both countries' leaders chose Saudi Arabia as the destination for their first foreign visits.
After years of disengagement, we expect Arab states to be more engaged with Syria and Lebanon now that Iran's influence has waned.
The National's Arab Affairs editor Vanessa Ghanem reports.
The summit saw the participation of two notable newcomers, Syrian interim President Ahmed al-Shara and Lebanon's newly elected President Joseph Aoun. Both leaders brought priorities that differ from their Tehran-aligned predecessors, marking the shifts happening in the Middle East.
Syria under Bashar al-Assad was suspended from the Arab League over the former president's deadly 2011 crackdown on pro-democracy protests, which spiraled into civil war. But it was readmitted to the bloc in 2023. In Lebanon, the new president and prime minister, Joseph Aoun and Nawaf Salam, are invested in strengthening relations with the U.S. and neighboring Arab states. They're also less constrained by Iranian influence.
Losing Syria meant Iran faced setbacks in supplying and rearming Hezbollah, as the group is today weaker than ever after a year-long war with Israel. Both Syria and Lebanon are seeking to enhance their relations with Arab nations.
Al-Shara and Aoun's participation in the Arab summit symbolized a huge shift in regional politics. Now, both countries are presented with an opportunity for stronger bilateral relations.
On the sidelines of the summit, they had a meeting. So both leaders agreed to control borders. And we've repeatedly heard them both say that they would not interfere in each other's affairs. Syria said we would be there for Lebanon if they need us. And the Lebanese side said the same. The relationship would be like any other, brotherly Arab states, but there won't be interference in each other's affairs. And that's the important point here.
That's all for this morning's headlines. You can get these stories and follow live updates at our site. Yasmin Al-Taji, The National.